I mean, yeah, and send me the video.
Yep. Okay. Take a swig. Swig of my juice. All right. Okay. And 3, 2, 1. Jay, we're back again with another episode. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot what our. Okay, hold on. I haven't read anything in a while. Let me start over. Jay, we're back again with another episode. Thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. You can help us make the next episode happen by joining us at dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com. And Jay, speaking of the union, we have 2 new union members.
Nice.
Patrick Carter and Taylor Cahy. Sorry if I mispronounced that, Taylor. Cahy. It's I don't know, but thank you for
Yes.
joining us, and thank you for becoming a part of the union. Hope you get to vote in these polls we've got going, which is what this episode's all about. And Jay got a little COVID brain, so you might need to say, Tim, are you okay during this?
You fade off.
Because I might just randomly
Yeah.
start drooling at some point.
I mean, not to freak you out, but we really don't know what this virus does to brains. So,
And I was already on very thin ice with mine to begin with. So any cracks that appear are going to do some
well,
damage.
you didn't lose your sense of smell, right?
No, I didn't. I don't know why I said that like Christopher Walken.
No, didn't.
um, which I think it's not a bad thing because the pills they give you have a bad aftertaste that gets in
Yeah.
the roof of your mouth and at the back of your throat. You just kind of can't get it out of there, no matter how much fruity drink stuff I'm drinking water and Gatorade and stuff to stay hydrated, and
Yeah.
I still have this weird taste in my mouth from those pills.
Yeah.
Someone described it as Home Depot flavored gum.
Okay.
It just
I'm
has this
imagining something
like
that smells like transmission fluid or
like oil and wood and paint, like that weird paint, like all that
yeah.
sort of mixed, and then in a chalky gum that's stuck in your mouth.
Mm,
Anyway,
that sounds unpleasant.
yeah. Speaking of the poll earlier that I did, this is a poll episode. This is one of our tournament polls. Is this the first tournament poll, Jay, or the second one?
This is the first winner of the monthly tournament. So
Okay. How it used to work was we would do one poll per month of 9 bands. And we realized, based on the number of suggestions, number of possible suggestions also that could still be coming in, which do come in all the time, it was going to take us until the end of the sun burning out to get through all of these suggestions if we only did 9 per month. So we decided, why don't we do 9 per week? And then weeks 1, 2, and 3 are our group rounds, and then week 4 is our final group, where the top 2 vote getters from each of the first 3 groups are placed into the final. Is that clear? We got what going on here?
so in the past, our winner would have had to be the best of 9. Now it has to be the best of 27 for us to review it.
Exactly.
So this record has earned it.
So for the first round, it was I'm going to go through these because this is just such a great walk through the 90s with all of these titles. Nuno Betancourt's Schizophrenic or Schizophonic. Damn you, Nuno. The Watchmen, McLaren, Furnace Room, Heat Miser, Cop and Speeder, the Matthew Good Band's Beautiful Midnight, the Darling Buds, Erotica, Medicines, The Buried Life, I Mother Earth, Scenery and Fish, Morel's Peterbilt Angel, and Nothing Beats a Royal Flush, a compilation. The winners were Heat Miser and the Matthew Good Band in round 1. In round 2, we had the Poster Children's RTFM, The Hive's Very Legal, Punk rock jukebox, various artists compilation, and Out Come the Wolves by Rancid, People Mover by the Elevator Drops, The Monroe Doctrine by Farside, Galactophonic by Tumbleweed, Mute by the Catchers, and God Damn It by the Alkaline Trio. Okay, for round 2, the winners were Rancid and the Poster Children. Moving along to round 3, our albums were Steve Lukather's Luke, Crush by the Doughboys, 10 Songs by I Hate Myself, Letters from Chutney by the Rainbow Butt Monkeys, which I swear to God, I thought that was the name of the band of Jack Black in High Fidelity. I didn't think that was a real band name. The other ones were The Sights and Sounds, The Fear and the Pain by the Staggers, Cold by Jane Weedland's Frosted, Music from the Adventures of Pete and Pete by Polaris, Martinis and Bikinis by Sam Phillips, and Feeling Older Faster by Threadbare. For this round, the winners were Doughboys and Sam Phillips. So you go to the final round. Heat Miser, Matthew Goodband, Poster Children, Rancid, Doughboys, Sam Phillips. Who's it gonna be? Dun, 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 dun. By a very close margin, the Doughboys Crush won with 27%, followed by, very closely, Rancid's Out Come the Wolves and the Matthew Goodband's Beautiful Midnight, both at 22%. Then Sam Phillips, Martinis and Bikinis at 12%, and Heat Miser's Cop and Speeder at 5%. So that's how our first multi-level marketing pyramid scheme happened here on Dig Me Out. That's how it all
How do you
went.
feel about the results?
Like, am I emotionally wounded by my pick?
Like, do you think it's a good representation of like what albums we want to review? I guess.
Oh yeah, I think this is a great representation of what we want to review, because you have stuff like, you know, a good example like Rancid. Rancid had some popularity in the 90s,
Right.
but like, how many people are walking around now that know Rancid maybe beyond like one song?
Yeah.
And I don't think any of their names are household names. So I think it works perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's a lot of chatter amongst the Patreon community, the DMO union, on like how these are going to play out. Oftentimes, I think we all have some assumption that popular bands are going to get more votes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this worked out that, you know, we had some like Matthew Goodband, I know in Canada is, you know, seems much more popular than here than it is in the US. Rancid obviously was pretty big. And then you've got some like bands with followings or some cult status like Poster Children and Heat Miser. But I think, well, let's tell them what won, because I think that's a pretty good representation of
I did. We covered that.
Okay. A band
Doughboys
that's,
Crush won.
you know, under the radar,
Oh yes,
less known, and worthy of digging up.
Now, had you ever heard of them before?
I had you know what? I'd heard the name, but I thought it was going to be, I assumed that they were like a pop punk band. Like I don't know, a Blink-182 type band. And I thought they were like later 90s.
Interesting.
Don't know why. Don't know why.
Yeah, the name had no connotation for me. I had no idea what they were going to sound like. And the album cover, looking at it, I was like, this could be,
Yeah.
I mean, this could be anything.
It doesn't,
that could be
doesn't
metal.
help you.
You know.
Yep.
Our commenters, our patrons, our union members, they had some thoughts on this. Kyle Bittner said, going with Doughboys, they rocked the last round and deserve a shot this time as well. Eric Peterson going with Out Come the Wolves, a classic of the era that still resonates with listeners today. It's also part of the scene and genre that DMO hasn't covered much. True, we should get more into, I think they come out of the San Francisco Gilman scene, if I'm not mistaken. Eric will set me straight if I'm wrong. Darren Lehman went with Matthew Goodband. Vadim went with the Doughboys. Excellent album, far less known and deserves to be heard. Sean Brown said Beautiful Midnight It Is will always be one of my favorite records. It's a stunner. Willie Dillon said he would be happy with Heat Miser, Poster Children, Rancid, or the Doughboys, but he went with Poster Children. Jeremy Amend said Poster Children, and Steven Muzinski went with Crush by the Doughboys. Joe Rowland went with he said Matthew Goodband or the Doughboys, and he said he was going to have to choose the latter. Ladder is the second one, right? Former in the ladder. That's how that works. So it's the Doughboys for
Yes.
Joe. Okay.
We have to we might have to be careful here. So there's a band called The Doughboys from New Jersey. Which features Little Steven. Wait, no. Is
Wait,
a
what?
Little Steven is a fan of the Doughboys from New Jersey. This is just the band we're doing is the Canadian band just called Doughboys.
Sorry, Doughboys.
Right?
Doughboys. It's Daboyz, right?
Boys.
The boys.
And dough as in money.
If you put a dollar sign, Gene Simmons will sue you. So don't
Maybe
do
this is
that.
why I was confused. It's because there's two bands.
Um. So, who else? Do you have the comments up, Jay?
God, no.
Oh,
I'm
why
doing
would
research
you?
on the Doughboys.
You're doing research on the Doughboys. Okay, I will read through the rest of the comments. So, what did everybody else have to say?
Hi, sorry.
I just saying
What is it?
Stepford 5 with an exclamation point capitalized.
Okay. 5 spelled out?
I sent it to you.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, no, not spelled out. Number 5. Netflix password. I just said it, so everybody's gonna hear it. That's great. Don't steal my Netflix password, people. Whitney Beeler went with the Doughboys. Nate Smith went with Matthew Goodband. Keith Badge, Poster Children. Jeremy Amend. Now here's what happened. This is what happened: is there was politicking happening. People were saying you got to go for the Doughboys. Jeremy Amend. I changed my vote to the Doughboys. But hear me
Dang.
out. Doughboys album is great. How is a band with a catalog like the Poster Children missed every opportunity? Blows my mind.
Another good or I don't know, good, but fun aspect of these polls is Poster Children were nominated twice and they've been nominated in the past and they continue to lose. I don't know what that means, but it's interesting they keep getting nominated. They keep getting enough to get to that point, but not to win.
You gotta press the flash. That's what
We need a
happens.
lobbyist.
Yeah, you do.
For Poster Children.
And then Bill Davidson said Sam Phillips is the only artist I've heard of. So that was his vote. So excellent. I think this is an excellent selection of albums here that I think any of these would have been interesting to review. The ones that I do know and don't know, because they're all names. Honestly, Doughboys was the only name I didn't know. I'd heard of all of them. So who are they? You mentioned they're Canadian. They're from Montreal, Quebec. Formed by John Kastner in 1987. He left the band The Asexuals. They released their debut album Whatever on Pipeline Records, and then followed that up in, let's see, Home Again, which was 1989. That was released on 88 on Restless Records. I get a cough. Hold on one second. There's going to be some editing on this one. There were some lineup changes around this time. Brock Patel was replaced who was the drummer, was replaced by Paul Newman, not the Paul Newman, just a gentleman named Paul Newman.
He brought the salad dressing to the
He did.
rehearsals.
Sort of like how I'd bring the Cheryl's cookies to the Stepford 5 practices. If you don't know what that's about, don't worry about it. So their third album, Happy Accidents, that was released in 1990. That was released also on Restless Records. And then they were signed to A&M. This was the major label signing. And they released in 1993 Crush, which is the album we're checking out. It's produced by Daniel Ray. That's spelled R-E-Y. He was known for working with the Ramones. This did get some notoriety. Won a Juno Award, or was nominated for Best Hard Rock Album for the Junos. It is in the number 38, or the single Shine is number 38 on Chart Magazine, which is a Canadian magazine's list of the top 50 Canadian songs of all time. And Shine was the theme song for Much Music's show The Wedge during the 1990s. You can't get more Canadian than that when you start bringing in Much Music. Now, interesting about that song and also about this album is Wiz, who is Darren Mark Brown, who's the lead singer of indie punk band Mega City 4 in the late 80s and 90s. He has co-writes on the single Shine and then the song Fix Me. And I don't know if he was basically just like, they were friends, I guess. And he came into the studio while they were working and helped write a couple songs. And this was mastered by Howie Weinberg, whose name is on like 2,500 different albums.
Sure.
This for mastering. But it's A&M, so you get one of those big names for your mixing and your mastering and that kind of stuff when you're on the major at that point. And this comes out August 3rd, 1993. Shine's the first single, then Fix Me, Disposable, and Neighborhood Villain were also released as singles. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Crush by, I'll just say Doughboys instead of the Doughboys, so we don't get them confused. Tell me one thing you liked about this album, Jay.
It's a solid melodic hard rock album to me. It dips its toe into power pop. At least that's what my ear hears with some of the harmonies going on here. I think that's a differentiator as well for the band. I also like just vocally, there's a lot of variety on the record. I don't know if they have more than one person singing, but there's quite a bit of range. It can be angsty and kind of switch on a dime to a really bright layered harmony, which is really interesting. Keeps the songs kind of feeling different enough. It reminded me of, at times, maybe like the Posies, or even a less metal The Wild Hearts. Just how hooky and melodic and the way the harmonies would work with the riffs in particular. I also heard, getting back to that kind of power pop feel, or more straight ahead hard rock with a little bit of punk attitude. You got a bit of like a early Goo Goo Dolls vibe with like Fix Me. But then the chorus goes to this layered harmony bit that, Goo Goo Dolls would never do. So I think just overall, there's just a really solid interplay between the vocals and the guitars. Melt is a good example where it starts off with this guitar riff that's, kind of melodic ascending thing. And then the vocal takes over, and it's similar, but not exactly the same. It plays off the idea, but goes somewhere different. And then they do a really cool lockup in the chorus where, the guitars are almost a harmony of the vocal. They're playing a similar, even rhythmic part that the vocal is, but it's just offset a little bit, and it gives this, really big dynamic with how tight the guitars and vocals are working together. And I guess the last thing I'd mention, outside of this, fairly melodic, harmony driven, riffs, fairly hard rock kind of sound, they do take some left turns that get maybe a little experimental, a little noisier. Guitars get washier, more affected. Disposable is a good example where it has a little bit more of a minor vibe. Some of the notes being played reminded me a bit of like some choices Failure might make. Um, the song covered a ton of ground vocally with different, sort of voices and treatments, but then it cuts to this really clean and poppy chorus that's almost unexpected from being, the verses are, a bit more spacey. Um, and then there's what I'm assuming a shitty song, uh, track 6, which it's like Zeppelin meets Failure with harmonies. It's a very like Zeppelin-y kind of guitar riff in the verses. But again, it has a little bit of that, I don't know, odd minor note choices going on that just gives it this extra level. And both of those are the tempos are a little down, so they're not as quite like pounding in your face, like I mentioned, that early Goo Goo Dolls kind of tempo, where it's just driving chunky rock. So those are some left turns that I thought were pretty cool too, where they could step out a bit from that formula, do something a little bit different, and it still worked pretty well. What worked for you?
Well, I think the Wild Hearts is a good starting point for people who maybe aren't sure where to place this record, because while the Posies is a like for the harmonies is a good call, there's a little bit harder edge to this.
Yeah.
I know that the lead singer had started out in a punk band, so you can kind of hear the little bit punkier side, as opposed to this being a straight up power pop record, which it's not. It's got a little bit more edge to it, and that's where that Wild Hearts things come in, where it's got attitude and it's got great riffs happening, but the thing that pushes it over the edge are these vocals and these hooks that are just like huge on some of these songs. I was trying to think of anybody in '93 who was doing anything like this, and there really wasn't in the US that was
No,
breaking through.
it sounds
And
very, very early, for the US. Like I would have guessed this was a later 90s record.
right, so I can see why it wouldn't have cracked the US market because of that. But I think the thing that caught me with the guitar playing is there is some like replacements Husker Du-esque guitar stuff that's happening, like on a song like Fix Me, or on Everything. Like there's some like harder edged 80s hardcore punk sounds that are really fun in the context of these very melodic songs. And like Paul Westerberg didn't do layered harmony vocals and that kind of stuff. Like if they did layered vocals, it was almost like for fun.
Yeah,
It wasn't something that everybody was in tune and they were
right.
trying. Whereas here, it's kind of like, well, what if you took like 3 Bob molds and layered them on top of each other at different harmonies, and then had this kick-ass guitar wall behind it. It's kind of what this album is at times, which
Yeah,
was not what I was expecting at all. Because you look at the album cover and you're like, this could be like a really weird metal band. This could be like a weird industrial. Like
right.
you
Yeah,
have no idea looking at that cover that this is going to be crunchy pop punk power pop.
yeah,
It doesn't give anything away. And in a way, if I was flipping through CDs at the CD bin in 1993, I don't know that I would take a chance on this record, because I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like it's not clear to me what this album is. Um so I could see why that wouldn't be a selling point for some people when they're trying to figure out how to spend their 17.99 for that week or whatever and buy a CD.
Sure.
But I think the Goo Goo Dolls call out is very relevant because these are songs that are meant for radio, even if radio hadn't caught up with them at this point. Like they would catch up, like US would essentially catch up with the Goo Dolls, and but they had to do it through a ballad.
Right.
Um,
Huh, that's very US.
right, exactly. Um, and for the Goo Goo Dolls, it's actually like two ballads because first you get Name, and
Yep.
then there was they had a couple more singles off of Boy Named Goo, and Long Way Down did well on the Twister soundtrack, but then it was the City of Angels soundtrack that really relaunched them with the second ballad that ended up on Dizzy Up the Girl. And then by Dizzy Up the Girl, they just were like, well, we're going to be a pop band now,
Yeah.
and kind of lose any edge whatsoever. Whereas this has that same feel, but you can kind of hear the band going, yeah, it's poppy, but we are not going to back down on the riffs. Like
Yeah.
there's just so much fun guitar stuff happening on this record. Like you mentioned, Disposable, which is, it goes on a little long compared to the rest of the album.
Sure.
Um, but still like really cool stuff. Fix Me has it. End of the Hall. There's all these songs have neat combos of lead guitar work. Sometimes there's like even like shredding solos and stuff. They aren't overly indulgently long, but there's some stuff thrown in here, and like in everything, there's some really cool little like transitional parts in that song where they do that thing where they stop, but when they hit the stops, they like change the notes in a really interesting way at like the end of a line, so it's not like the very predictable. They're not staying on the note. They're like jumping around. I'll sample that when so you know what I'm talking about. But I just thought this sounded like a band kind of hitting their peak to me when all is said and done. Like you could tell they had a couple albums in them, and this is very confident songwriting, very confident playing all across the board. Is what didn't work for you on the record?
Yeah, there's a few songs here where I felt like they sound a bit generic grunge metal. Um, so I'm thinking of Neighborhood Villain is one. Just kind of a lumbering, quiet, loud, dynamic. Vocally, the lines are, kind of drawn out. They're not sharp and super melodic. It's kind of moany and um it's a little angry sounding. It goes from being like angsty and full of energy to like I think at that tempo to it starts to feel like grungy angry music. And then Fall is another example as well where it's kind of a dumb riff. I mean, it's okay, but it's just like a generic sounding riff, mid-tempo, drawn out vocal, like
Yeah.
it's just not that sharp, interesting, dynamic, melodic. Even the harmonies, they're kind of more of like an Alice in Chains kind of harmony where it's like this drony kind of thing, which Alice in Chains does that. It's awesome, but like I don't want to hear this band necessarily do that style of
Right.
harmony. Um, Summer Song is a bit odd too. It's a little trippy. Um, just not as compelling from a song standpoint. If you played those songs on acoustics, they would not be that interesting as the other whatever 8 to 9 songs on the record.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there's just some material here that's just pedestrian and not amazing and doesn't necessarily fit what they do well.
Yeah, I
Um,
hit those same ones, to be
yeah,
honest. Like Fall sounds like a band trying to do early 90s Seattle.
Yeah. And I guess the last thing would just be like, I think overall the production of this is good. Like, I don't think this sounds like a 93 record. Um, in that it's like the, leftover 80s production, or it's overly grungy sounding. I think it's a good sounding record that still sounds, relevant now production wise. Like, it's not dated. Uh, there is a lot of compression on the guitars. I wouldn't mind if they just, you lose some of the dimension of the sound sometimes because they're so compressed.
Yeah, you lose the
And
bass sometimes because of that.
yeah, it's hard to discern the melodies sometimes. Like, it took me a while to really like grab onto some of the melodies. I think the Wild Heart suffer from this a bit too. It's just like these heavy compressed guitars. They can kind of get in the way of the vocal range. Um, and then like the last nitpick would be the drummer is good, but he's kind of got that punk feel to the way he plays. Um, and it's not super in the pocket and like really like locked up with the bass in a really like powerful way. It's not distracting. It's just, I wonder what these songs would sound like with a slightly different drummer, or,
Mhm.
drum approach. But those are nitpicks. I think that the biggest, what it doesn't work is just those songs I called out. Anything not work for you?
A lot of the same stuff. I thought that this band has no business like getting dirgy
Yeah.
and grungy, and even mid tempo at some point is not in their favor. Like this needs to be in the shine, melt, fix me. I mean, shitty song is not my favorite from a creativity standpoint lyrically,
Right.
but it's still a cool song.
Yeah.
Um, even the lesser album tracks that aren't as obvious singles are still really good tracks. But like you mentioned, yeah, Summer Song. I feel like you mentioned calling it trippy. Like if you're gonna go for something weird to close out the album, then just like go for it. Like really get weird with it.
Yeah.
And I could have heard them bringing in like a like a whole like bringing a Beatles ass horn for that last song or something, or just go a little off the rails to say like we are really messing around on this last one, and
Yeah.
we're gonna play around and hope you enjoy the ride sort of thing. Because otherwise it just sounds like, oh, we got a little bit there, but you know
Half-hearted.
yeah, it's half-hearted. um and I didn't feel like there was much in the rhythm section that was like making me stand, like making my ear catch my ear. Like it was
Right.
entirely in the guitars and vocals.
Yeah. It's very guitar and vocal forward.
And part of that just might be the mix. I mean, a lot of times it was just like the bass was sort of blending in with everything. So
Yep.
when it does stand out, it tends to be on the slower songs, and it's not necessarily to its favor.
Yep.
So that was my issue with that.
Yeah. When the tempo slow down, it puts a lot of pressure. If you don't have either an amazing bass player or drummer, and or just not allowing them to do much, right? Then it puts more pressure on the guitars and the vocals to do even more. So I think on the faster stuff you get away with that and it all works because the melody's being driven by those two instruments and you're just along with for the hooks. But when you start to slow stuff down and you don't have that bass step forward or those drum step forward to something like super cool, now you've got holes and you drawn out melodies that aren't super hooky, and there's a lot of space to fill.
Mm-hmm. There is. I have to confess. So we were gonna do this recording like a couple days ago before I got COVID. Um, Once I got COVID, I kind of completely forgot what the album's like, and I had to re-listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Be like, okay, it's coming back to me now, because I had listened to it, like 2 or 3 times before getting COVID, and then when
Yeah.
COVID hit, it just like, hey, everything you just learned, no, that's going out the window. So it was like discovering it twice. So let's talk about overall ratings on this record. Worthy album, better EP, or decent single? Where do you land?
I'm at a worthy album. I'm gonna cut, a couple songs here, ideally. Neighborhood Villain, Fall, and Summer Song. Even with those songs, it's only 45 minutes. So it's, pretty quick listen. If you trim those out, I think it would be nearly, perfect. A little dose of really interesting, but fairly straightforward, accessible, riffy rock with melodies.
I agree with you on those picks, and I agree with you as a worthy album. This was not released on vinyl, so this would be something that would be worthy of I think a vinyl reissue. It's, if somebody wanted to, do that. And I think trimming Neighborhood Villain and Fall and Summer Song is the right moves, because then you have a really tight 9-song, just super catchy,
Yeah.
energetic, fun record. Even though some of these songs have, like there's some minor stuff happening it's not all major chords and smiles. I mean, there's some
Yeah.
cool stuff happening I think that people might get. I think the Wild Hearts comparison is the best one, where it's
Yeah.
got an edge to it. It's not just syrupy pop.
Yep. It's not overly sweet.
Yeah.
You will get some, if the parts that feel a little angry, angsty, tough, dark, there's different emotions going on here than just straight up sugar.
Now, Kyle Bittner was the original suggester of this, and when he wrote in, he said Canadian power pop with muscular guitars and melodic vocals. This would fit in with fans of Red Cross and Seaweed. And I don't know if he was just trying to start a fight there because he knows our past with Seaweed. I see the Red Cross.
Yeah,
I do
I
not
like
see
the
the
Red
Seaweed
Cross.
comparison.
I kind of get it.
No, nope. That was my frown.
Go
Staying
search our
upside
archives
down.
for the Seaweed episodes we've done, and you'll understand what we're talking about if you haven't heard them.
Well, we got to thank Kyle. We also need to thank the other folks who made it to the final round: Willie Dillon, Darren Lehman, Richard Waterman, and Patrick Testa, along with Kyle. Congratulations on making it to the final round, and to Kyle for winning the first annual or first monthly multi-level tournament. We got to come up with that. The Grand Master Tournament, the live or die tournament, something like that. Something ultra dramatic.
You're trying to come up with like an equivalent of March Madness for
Yes.
for 90s rock.
Monthly Madness. There you go. Monthly Mayhem. It's Monthly Mayhem. Monster Trucks. Truckosaurus.
Canada got month one.
Got month one in the books. Hallelujah. If you want to be a part of that, that whole thing, you can suggest an album by going to digmeoutpodcast.com. You go to our suggest an album page and you suggest an album there. Just drop it in the form. You put your name in, you put the name of the album, the artist, give us a little write-up, let us know why you're picking it, why you're sending it to us, and then it's going to end up in one of these monthly madness. I don't know. Is that working? Monthly madness polls, monthly mayhem monthly. I'm gonna work on that. I'll workshop that with the intern and see what he comes up with.
So I'm looking at. We just posted the final for July. I'm not going to say what the bands are. Here you go. But another Canadian band could win.
Wow. I think Canada is starting to steal the spotlight from Australia, because Australia was, hard charging for a long time as dominating the non-US picks.
We'll see. We got I don't know where all these bands from. I see Canada, I see California, Detroit, Chicago, maybe Minneapolis, but Canada might pull it out again.
That's crazy.
Shocking.
I mean, they did make some music, so we should probably check it out up there. And we have, actually. If you look at our archives,
we
we've
have.
talked about many Canadian bands. We're not
Yes.
ignoring them.
We are big fans.
You're not being ignored, Canada. Also, what cannot be ignored is the box newsletter. When you sign up for it, it comes to you every week in the email. Reviews of new releases of 80s and 90s relevant music, TV shows, documentaries, books, usually music. That's what's that's the thing here. But if something like Pam and Tommy happens, we might talk about it on the 1 minute review. And then you can also check out those reviews by joining us at Patreon, like Patrick and Taylor did this past couple of weeks. Go to Patreon via dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com. Sign up, vote in our polls, join the Discord where all the chitter chatter is happening. And then last but not least, Apple Podcasts is where you go to leave a positive review. Give us some positive feedback, especially if you're Canadian. We're paying a lot of attention to you now. You should give us some love back. Some love. It's bad when I say it like that.
Yeah, that was gross.
Sorry. I apologize to all of Canada. My voice is going to give out now. I can feel it in my throat. It's like, I'm going to kill you. For Jay, I'm Tim, and we're out, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.
Just get it over the finish line.